strengthening corporate impact in communities. We'll start with Melissa. ¿Quién eres? Who are you?
¿Quién eres? I love that question. Every time anyone asks me that question, I always start with, I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants from Jalisco. It's who I am. I bring those people in with me. I represent them in the work that I do. So I want to share that always. But also, I am a very proud brand representative for McDonald's, who is headquartered in Chicago. So I'm here to be representing our Mc Familia today.
Denise, who are you?
Well, hello, good, there we go. Good morning, my name is Denise Beck, and so my mom, I'm bicultural. My mom is from Chile, my dad is from North Dakota. So very Scandinavian, so very unique Latina experience growing up in North Dakota. I work at Medtronic, so my role there is I'm a vice president of human resources for cranial and spinal technologies operating unit, and very, very proud to be one of the co-chairs for our Hispanic Latino network, which has nationwide responsibilities.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
And who is to your left?
Good morning. Lupe de la Cruz. I'm the Senior Director for Public Policy Government Affairs for PepsiCo. In the Western U.S., I manage the state and local government affairs in the 19 states west of Texas. Recently, I learned also that includes the territories of Guam and the Marianas. So I'm doing quite a bit across the West. I am the son of and grandson of migrant farm workers. I'm very proud of that lineage and that history. I'm a father. I'm a husband and son. And very recently, the co-caregiver to my mother, who has Parkinson's. And I wanted to give shout out to Medtronic and Denise because of that technology. For 20 years, my mother lived independently in her own home because of that technology.
Yeah.
And of course, Melissa at McDonald's serves us breakfast making our morning.
You know, just to dig a little deeper, we'll start with you, Lupe. And kindly, I asked your name in the back.
Yes.
Stage.
Guadalupe is my full name. My grandfather was born on Dia de Guadalupe and passed it on to my father and myself, so I'm the third.
Orale. Continuing with you, Lupe, how did you get to where you got?
Well, as I said, on the shoulders of my grandparents who labored in the fields in the Central Valley, from migrating from Florida to California. It was my father who said, basta, I need to go to school, and ended up in Lee Grande, California, in the Central Valley. And it was his drive, his desire for education that instilled in me, and also his drive for understanding and empowering the community. As a young Chicanito, I was out marching with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And that instilled in me the obligation to continue to fight for others.
Obligation. That's very powerful. Thank you, Lupe. Denise, how did you get to where you got currently?
Well, that's a long story.
Don't worry, we have time.
So went to university and in Minnesota, and knew I was like, I am not going to work for the man. And at that time, I wanted just to travel the world. So I taught English overseas. So I was in South Korea and then Chile. That was my ultimate goal, was to be able to meet my family and really know kind of where that side of me really comes from. So that was the ultimate goal. And then I had run out of all my money. I had to go back and make more money. So I went back to South Korea and then married my husband. My husband's Korean, so we have a multicultural family. And then came back and started working with Medtronic. Thought that, oh gosh, I started very entry level. I was like, I'll be here a couple of years and we'll see what happens. But great opportunities, continued advancement, wonderful mentors, development opportunities have kept me there for now 19 years. Yeah.
19 and growing. Gracias.
Fortunate.
Yeah. Melissa, can you elaborate? How did you get to where you got to today?
Sure. I love the through line. So also a granddaughter of migrant farm workers. That's how they ended up in Chicago. So they had a conversation with a Puerto Rican in New York who was like, hey, I have family in Chicago, and they pay a lot better in those factories than they do on the fields. You should go there. So that's how our Mexican family ended up in Chicago. And I also was like, I want a career dedicated to service. So I spent the better part of my career in nonprofit. So I'm brand new to corporate. And I think it's really important to talk about these alternative stories, like how we got here, because having this long career nonprofit, I thought, could I find a career and make impact in corporate? Can I make a difference for our community? And for a long time, I thought it wasn't possible because we don't hear these stories about the good that these organizations do in our community. And by chance, I took a risk, and this opportunity floated my way, and it was like, you can make a difference in Chicago, my hometown, for communities you care about, and we value the experience that you have cultivated over the last 20 years. And I was like, wow, this is too good to be true. Let me just try. And so I'm here. So I'm a recent addition to the brands, but I have found so much purpose in the work that I do, and I continue to talk about how this kind of work is really critical for our communities to know about and to be part of.
Fantastic. Aplausos. If you want to comment on the coincidental color match today, is that those are McDonald's colors?
Oh,
Just asking, wanted to confirm.
they might.
Great. Okay. I will now delve into the subject matter area. So I'm taking an approach of academia. I'm going to just frame the context using research, but then I'm going to ask you professional and then personal perspectives. And we talked a little bit about this prior to our session, this notion of creating shared value. Where does that come from? There's an article titled Creating Shared Value out of Harvard Business School, Michael Porter, the godfather of modern management, and Mark Kramer. And the notion really is this: for a company to hone its competitive advantage, company cannot just meet the bottom line, make the dinero, make the money. You have to care. So this notion of creating shared value is actually an evolution to CSR. Whereas CSR is really about doing what's good because it makes sense, literal sense. Creating shared value, CSV, is about generating not only economic impact, but social impact. So on that note, on a professional level, Melissa, we'll start with you. How is McDonald's community engagement efforts pushing needle forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love to tell this story because it's a story that we don't often hear. It's not in our commercials necessarily. You're thinking about burgers and fries, but, we're showing up so many ways. We're a global brand, so we're thinking about our food quality and sourcing. We're thinking about how we're showing up for the planet. We're thinking about how we show up in our communities locally, and we're also thinking about jobs, empowerment, inclusion. So there's lots of folks here in our audience today that could tell you how they started as crew, and now they are leaders at our brand. That's an incredible thing that we often tout, and also like how we're making commitments to the communities in which we exist. So diversity is good for business, but it's also good for us, right? It helps us attract talent. It makes me want to go work for this brand that I can believe in. And then when all our families are having breakfast on Sundays, they love to hear the stories about how we're investing in their local communities. And it makes them feel good about making sure that they're taking their family every Sunday for those hotcakes and cafecito that they so love.
I just have to share this. I have a fond memory, coincidentally, that includes the McDonald's brand. And I remember a number of birthdays actually taking place at McDonald's premises where they had playgrounds. I think they had the hamburger, but they took him down. He was not politically correct in time, but it was a great party. Soft ice cream served. Good memories. Thank you. Denise.
Yeah, so Medtronic is a med tech company, and our mission is around alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. And then there are 6 tenets within that mission, and one is to be a good corporate and community citizen. So there are initiatives, and I won't take all the time, but we have 1 month, so P6, our 6th tenet of the mission, where we have really intentional engagement around the organization to have volunteerism. It's lined up through the corporation will also match dollar matches for volunteer hours, dollar for dollar match During our foundation, our foundation is looking at where are areas of investment. We work with our employees to identify where they see the value and where we can look. With our Hispanic Latino network, we're taking a really focused effort on education, and specifically Latinos in the STEM fields as well. So I'm happy to share some examples of work a little bit later, but those are areas, supplier diversity. When we look at the work, so we have a focused team dedicated to supplier diversity, and then we also at the network are engaging their health equity. How does Medtronic take a stance and lead the way to make sure that we're being able to ensure all families, similar to Lupe's mom, have awareness and access to our life-saving products and therapies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Denise. Awareness and access. Lupe, you dabble in the world of government affairs, advocacy. How do you, in your role, through this professional lens of being able to create shared value, how do you do that for PepsiCo?
So with PepsiCo, I've been with the company for 18 years, and I've seen this journey of a conversation, diversity, starting out as diversity, then it became diversity and inclusion, and now the conversation has evolved to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that evolution is something that I'm very proud of for PepsiCo. On the policy side, I'll touch on that first, but I want to share with you, and you heard from Mariah Simeon, who is our diversity, equity, inclusion senior leader earlier, and she shared with you the Racial Equality Journey initiative that PepsiCo launched following the murder of George Floyd and the community upheaval and unrest that was in our cities. Following that conversation, many companies, many addressed the issue and made large commitments to equity and inclusion. But what I really appreciate about PepsiCo's entry into this conversation was that, one, it wasn't new for us, but two, it was the acknowledgement in the word journey. We called our initiative the Racial Equality Journey. The acknowledgement that we don't know what we don't know. The acknowledgement that we're going to need to learn, listen, and engage, and then evolve. And that's what I appreciate. We're our second year in that 5-year commitment of over $500 million in investment into the community, in the Black and Latino communities. In addition, the acknowledgement that while the first investment was in the Black community, that then it was a conversation around what do we need to do to be engaged appropriately in the Hispanic and Latino community, and then the AAPI community, the Asian and Pacific Islander community. So it is a constant conversation and evolution in that growth. In the policy space, where I have my say in where we're headed, it's engaging on public policy, on voter rights, on elements that are empowering to the community, where you might not think that the largest food and beverage company is going to be engaged. But we're talking about policies and leaning into policies on human trafficking. We're talking about policies that are engaging on voter rights. We're talking about very significant policies that we recognize that we have an opportunity to leverage our resources to be significant players.
Thank you, Lupe. As mentioned previously, the questions would be focused through professional lens, but now personal lens. And then after that, we'll get into some detail in terms of specifically what each of your corporate entities does to support the Hispanic community, both locally, but globally. Melissa, what's your why? Why do you care about community engagement?
I shared a little bit about my journey earlier. So coming from nonprofit, I've done what I call like community strengthening work that our communities need. So how to create strong families, how to reduce barriers to employment and economic growth. And I found that was possible in a role like this. So I know that forever and ever, I'm going to do work that strengthens our community. And I want to be able to do that with great impact and scale. And I never thought about having the opportunity to do that at a brand that has a global impact and global reach, so that the work that I do today is going to impact thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So I get up every morning energized to do this work on behalf of our brand. I also think about the family that came before me to this country that, did not have an opportunity to sit in a seat like this today with people that look like you who all carry these stories with us. You know, this is a very powerful room. We're all carrying legacies of our family, of the dreams that they had when they came to this country, and hopes for you to make a better world. And I sit in a place of privilege to be able to continue to do that. And, you know, I encourage us all to think about, you know, all of those stories that we carry with us and how we're making, you know, opening doors and how we're making this world a better place for all of us.
That's awesome. Very powerful. Reminds me of this concept of humility. As Bueno said, humilde, it's good to be humble. Thank you for that, Melissa. Denise, what's your why? Why do you care about community engagement? How does that translate into your work?
Yeah, you know, it is, why are we here? You know, you can start with that question. Why do I exist? And if you could just take it, how can this world be a little better with me being a part of it? That's my why. You know, and I have the privilege of, you know, working for, it's a for-profit company that is making people's lives better. Every day now, you know, we go into work, we have great days, we have challenging days, but I think about the patients. Lupe's mom, many of us, you know, diabetes is so prevalent across the Latino community, and the way that we are able to help people live full lives. There's that aspect. Growing up, I grew up in low-income housing. I had people helping me. I had mentors, you know, or counselors who were looking out for me through some really challenging times. I almost didn't go to university, right? But there were a couple people who looked out for me and said, you really should do this. So I look at the work that's taking place within our Hispanic Latino network and reaching out to our broader community around education. You know, we have a partnership with SHIP right now. And that is, it's an elevated partnership where we realize that Latinos enter STEM, and correct me here if I'm wrong, but Latinos enter STEM education at the same rate as our Caucasian counterparts, but drop out at, it was 85% after the first year. Why? They don't have the mentors or others to be able to say, here's where we can help. So Medtronic is taking a stance. We want to change that. So we have an internship program where we brought in, was 38 students and a 90% conversion rate to being Medtronic employees. We've initiated a scholarship program. So many students are dropping out because of family hardships and financial difficulties, and we're able to make a difference there. You know, right now with Hispanic Heritage Month, we have an additional emphasis around some of our giving for STEM education, and the company is giving a 2-for-$1 match. So if you pitch in $100, well, they're receiving $300. And so it's that impact, and that's my why. And then also just helping empower the communities. You know, we have such a high degree of entrepreneurship. It's in our DNA, right? And from a supplier diversity, how can Medtronic make a stance to say this is a highly regulated environment? There are different quality aspects, and how do we help these suppliers be able to be successful, because we know they are also then supporting the community within. So that's my why, is making a difference of what my one action, what can that cascade be to make the world a little better?
That's great. Aplausos. Thank you. Lupe.
You know, it's actually a thread through, right, that what my fellow panelists have said already, and that and as I stated in my opening introduction of obligation, an obligation to the folks who toiled in the fields to get out of the fields. Who I think of how my grandparents might have imagined the life that I get to live today. And so that's an obligation that I have to fulfill for their vision, for their future, for what they envision the future for their children and grandchildren. But it's also today, as I get to sit in rooms, and how many of us have been the only Latina, the only Latino, the only person of color in that room? Yeah. Exactly. And it's again, when you walk into that room, it's an obligation to use your voice. And that's what drives me today, is that I've entered into a room where there may be very few, if any, who share the same life experience that I had, who
who may or may not know what it is to live and grow up in public housing, to know public assistance, and to know the struggles of being the only person in the room that has that background. And so I feel a strong energy of my family to speak up, and more importantly, to make room, to pull up another chair at that table and say, let's add more.
Let's add more. That is inspiring. Thank you. I'll take a different turn with this conversation. And I want you to respond. Remember in the 90s, reading the Chicago Tribune, there was an article that stated that by the year, I think, 2000 census, there'd be 30 million Latinos in the U.S. I was very proud. I let a orgullo, pride. I told my dad that. Hey, we're going to be 30 million strong. Back then, I was more of a Chicano.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, we're going to take back our Mexica lands. You're familiar with that?
Yeah.
It's the four-corner area of the U.S. where the four rivers meet. Utah, Colorado, right? Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, right? It's been a while. I said, former Chicano. And they, we're going to take it back. And my dad's response was, no seas pendejo. Vamos a ser 30 millones de pendejos sin leer y escribir. Pues, no, pues wow. I share that story because it's true. And two, it made me think, what can I as an individual, what can we as individuals do to improve the situation for otros, for others?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Some of us care. That's why I asked the question, why do you care? Right? As an ally, right? As a Chicano or Chicano, right? Peruana, whatever your background, but why do you care, right? It's important because some of us excel in our careers. Not all of us look back. Looking at you, Anthony, from State Street. Good example. He's a big smiley face. But it's about lifting others. So let's get deeper.
Yeah.
What is McDonald's doing to help Hispanics, internal, but also external en la comunidad?
Yeah, that is what excites me the most. So I know we were talking earlier about like what's the most exciting thing that's in your that you're doing right now. So I get to oversee this local impact and stewarding our community relations. So like, how are we showing up in Chicago? And by the way, you know, McDonald's is located in Chicago, and we've had a deep presence in there. But now we're really thinking about like, how do you take that to the next level? And what that looks like for me is, you know, I've come in the most exciting time at McDonald's. You know, we're making deep investments at headquarters. We're located in the West Loop. And we've also just recently announced that we are bringing our innovation labs there, which means that there's going to be more jobs. There's going to be more vibrancy. We're investing in tech along with our partners in Google. So you're seeing sort of this like thriving industry in Chicago. But what we know is that there are systemic things that are happening in our city that impact our youth. So, you know, barriers to employment, barriers to, you know, education. And a lot of our young people in the city are impacted by violence. So like, how does a company that is very strongly recognized, that is a global brand, that is living in a city that is thriving, but also parts of it are not? Like, what do we do and how do we show up? So we most recently announced a $3.5 million investment in Black and Brown youth.
Nice.
And I'm super proud of that. And, you know, my team gets to lead on that work. So we've invested in 40 different nonprofits that are doing the work. You know, we're not the solution, but we are the folks who are going to support and empower the folks that know what they're doing and that have been doing it for a very long time. So they're the ones who are experts in violence reduction. They're the ones who are experts in employment and inclusion and all of the work that makes our city stronger. And when I get to sit in a seat as a Latina who's grown up in Chicago, and I get to say I was part of making that dream come true for lots of our organizations, ones that I used to be a part of, I mean, it's a phenomenal thing, right? Like, es un sueño hecho realidad. Like, honestly, right? Like, this girl from the city who, you know, I never thought that we would be doing work like this, and that it would mean so much to our CEO to make statements to say, like, we are doubling down on our investments in Chicago. And when you say Chicago, you say Latino, because we're the third largest, population across the U.S. And for me, that's a beautiful story to tell.
That's
great.
Thank you, Melissa. Of course, doing the work looks different depending on the organization you represent. Denise, earlier in the green room, you talked about how Medtronic does doing the work in the area of early career. Can you provide us some more detail?
Oh, you're getting that. I'm very passionate about this. Yeah, so I mentioned early career. So some of the work that we're doing to bring students in, I'm very intentional. Our Chevron friends, we were laughing last night saying, this seems to be the theme of the program, is that being intentional. Right. Intentional about where we're recruiting with the Hispanic serving institutions, the partnerships that we have. Okay, well, it's one thing to bring employees into the door. Now, how do we make sure that we're tracking the advancement? What types of opportunities do we have? So within our employee resource groups, we have, first of all, about 4,000 employees are in our employee resource group. So that provides that sense of community. But we're also saying, how is this providing leadership opportunities and being able to provide that business impact? So there's that aspect. We also have targeted programs, whether it's a sponsorship program where we have specific talent attend, they get that visibility, business experience. There's targeted programs and partnerships like here with HACR. The fact that we are attending these programs, and you heard about the other programs, the Young Hispanic Corporate Achievers Program, the Leadership Institute, Empower Her, making sure we take advantage of those programs and we have that representation. So we look internally, what can we do to develop, and then also take advantage of some of the external programs as well.
That's awesome, Denise. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lupe.
I spoke of the racial equality journey that was launched 2 years ago, and we're in our second year. And what's important is to hold metrics to measure our success in those. It's one thing to donate money. It's another thing to invest in the community. And that investment means accountability to ourselves and accountability to our partners. And so what I'm very proud about that initiative is that we are holding ourselves accountable. We're holding ourselves accountable to growth of Latino talent within the company, so that we have representation reflective of the demographics. I love your story of the census. I have my own. I'll take a little sidewalk here. When I was following the 1980 census, I think I'm a bit older than you.
I'm more following than you.
Following the 1980 census, I had the great opportunity to meet Cesar Chavez, and he was at a Labor Day rally in 1981. And he was standing up in front of the audience and telling them, because the census numbers had just come out, about how large and how amazing this Latino growth would be in our communities. And he shared with them that Dr. King had told his community, we shall overcome. He shared with the hermanos, we shall overwhelm. And then went to go through the data. The data is our friend. The data tells us if we're going in the right direction, where our strengths is, where our weaknesses are, where we need to pay attention to. And he was empowering the community to know the demographics are going in the direction and we need to be ready. As I was 10 or 11 years old at that time, and so don't do the math, right? And as he was stepping off stage, I was backstage. I was collecting cans. That's what I was trying to make a little money. And as he stepped off the stage, he literally punched me in the chest. I don't know if you know, he was a boxer in the Navy. He punched me, the great peace activist, right? He punched me in the chest, right in the solar plex. I lost my breath for a second. He told me, "Mijito, you better be ready." And that stuck with me. So the reality is that the demographic numbers are there. The data is there. The data is our friend. We need to use that data, and that at PepsiCo, going all the way back to our racial equality journey. That's what we use today. Are we reflective of what is the demographics in the community? Are we reflective of the communities that we work with, where we serve? Our motto is to increase smiles with every sip and bite.
how are we doing that in a meaningful way, right? Or how are we empowering our community and being engaged in our community in a significant way? So I'm very excited about our initiative. I'm very excited with the trajectory that we're going, the fact that we're growth, 2,000 scholarships across to date, and growing with the community colleges, investing in our youth so that we have a pipeline, that we're empowering our youth into the pipeline into the workforce, investing in our businesses, our partners. One of the initiatives that I was extremely excited about was the HEFA project, recognizing that the largest growing of entrepreneurship is our Latinas. And so how are we empowering them, growing their businesses so that they can build the scale? And so that was one of the initiatives launched this year and building. Again, it wasn't just simply donating money. It was investing. So what resources are we adding to the dollars? And that's mentorship, that's opportunity, and growth.
I love that.
Excellent.
You mentioned a keyword, be ready, and you learned that through your experience with the late Cesar Chavez, a hero I respect. It's one thing to be ready, but once you are ready, what are you doing individually, but also professionally, internal, external, to help those that are ready, that are looking at you?
Right.
Some of those individuals could be in this very audience. What about me? I'm ready. Readiness requires an opportunity. What opportunities are you actually creating? Melissa.
That's beautiful. I love that. I always say you don't got to get ready if you stay ready. And that's my motto. So I stay ready.
Good.
That's good.
And, one of the things that, I thought about in corporate was, like I'm making this transition into this global brand, and I've been doing really localized community impact work. So I'm like, well, how do I bring that spirit into this space? And because, that's what fuels my work. That's me, and I have to show up authentically. So, I do that. So now, formally and informally, I work to mentor emerging leaders, self-identify as Latina, that are looking to take the next step in their career journey. I share my story and all of my missteps. I share sort of the long trajectory here and really try to create sort of an open dialogue with folks, just to allow them to have someone that looks like them, to ask those hard questions too. I actually was talking to Silvana Montenegro from Chase, and funny enough, when I was looking to make this transition, I was interviewing at different places, and on one of the interviews, I spoke to someone on her team, so shout out to William. And we were talking about like how to do this work, and there comes a point at the end of an interview where they're like, do you have any questions? And I realized in that moment that I did not have anyone to ask the questions that I had, like these burning questions about being a Latina in corporate. And so I took a chance, and I was like, can I just ask you about what it's like to be a Latino in corporate? And he was like, yes, of course. And so we sort of made space for me to ask these questions, and I think about that a lot. I think about having spent a career as an executive leader in nonprofit, but I really had not cultivated relationships with people who looked like me on the other side, and how important that was, and that, you don't know how you will change the trajectory of folks if you just take some time and, answer a question, make yourself available, cultivate, sort of relationships with people who might be aspiring to be like you. And for me, it was transformational, absolutely. And I choose to bring that spirit into the brand. So when I think about like how we show up and like my impact as a community leader, we often find that a lot of the work that we do in our companies are siloed. So we'll say like, oh, DEI is doing this. And I think a lot about what Ms. Wendy was talking about yesterday, cultural transformation. We've got to bring it through and through, right? Inclusion is a value. It's not what we do, it's how we do the work. And it's everywhere and everyone. And it's not just living in me and community relations or government relations, public policy. It's not just with my philanthropy folks. It's not just with DEI, but it's everyone, right? So now I'm working to like break down those silos. So like I'm asking the folks in marketing, what are you doing? You're marketing to my people, right? Like how are we showing up? Can we activate together? When you're doing things in Chicago, can we connect them to community? Can we bring out those community leaders? Can we bring out those young folks folks to experience something on a really big scale to show how McDonald's is showing up for our community. And I invite us to all do that, right? Go back to your companies and say like, hey, I'm gonna call up the people in marketing, the people who are seeing like Hispanic consumer markets, like let's talk to them.
Right.
Let's ask them how they're showing up for us, and let's like bring it all together.
You know, Melissa, I love that because you know what, I'm sensing your superpower is you're a connector.
Yeah.
And I really think that is something that is a unique strength in our Latino community, is that connection, that looking out for one another, that sense of familia. And that's something, you know, as I'm working with others and mentoring, I ask them, you know, don't have to change yourself. Identify what are those unique strengths. So when we look at our Latino community, what are our unique strengths that are our differentiators that are adding value to the community and making a difference? And so I love that point around that connection and your superpower. And you're new to the company and you're like the brave one going out there. That's awesome. Yeah.
What I think that speaks to is there's a great research by Dr. Gutierrez. She at Loyola. She speaks about the imposter.
Yeah, imposter syndrome.
And the idea that you know we snuck in somehow. You know we got in, so let's lay low. Let's you know, let's not get noticed and get kicked out. And there's a little bit through that within us naturally, I think, just because of what we've been taught, because of what we've gone through. But I like what you say in terms of speaking up, because that's our power. That's why we're there. That's why we were invited into the room, or we earned our way through the room. We pushed our way in, and we earned our way there. That seat belongs to us. And so I think that's the superpower that we need to embrace, that we need to acknowledge the fact that what we bring to the table is important, that our voice is relevant, and what we have to contribute is needed.
Yes.
And therefore, use it. Use that voice. Use it powerfully, and be a sponsor. If you're at the part of your career where you are growing, then find the sponsor, like you said. Find the person who is going to help give you the keys to the doors. That's going to open up those doors, and you need to ask. It's an affirmative ask that needs to be made. I've been fortunate throughout my career. I started out in politics, working for elected officials and campaigns, that I got to build up a mentorship through them and understanding. And then when I worked into the nonprofit area, as I accelerated, I got to sit at tables of decision, where now I got to make sure that there were others at the table that brought significant voices as well, that diversity of voices. So look for sponsors. And if you're at the place in your career to be a sponsor, do it. Because that is your legacy. That is your opportunity to build and to grow within the company. You will be more valued when you give that voice away.
Yeah, and on that note too, thinking about not being afraid to ask the tough questions. And that is another one where at first, you know, you might feel like, oh my goodness, is this right? You can feel that the nerves kind of bundle there. And then you ask the question and you'll be noticed, right?
Right.
And it's not just for you, but it's asking the tough questions. Where are the Latinos on this candidate slate? And, you know, I've challenged that, and it's like, my voice now can make a difference. And now people say, okay, she's not afraid to ask the tough questions. So when you're speaking out, are you looking out for that broader community as well, you know?
Absolutely.
Love that. Thank you. Let me share a personal story in terms of finding a sponsor. Right? It's a personal one. Another personal story. I just received notice of receiving a full ride to Loyola University Chicago, and my dad was working 2 jobs, Central Steel and Wire Company, steel factory worker. And Monday through Saturday, he worked as a mechanic in the garage. I came home with the good news of, hey, Papa, I got a full ride for the first year. ¿Cómo lo voy a hacer para los otros años? How am I going to pay for the other years? And my dad's response was very direct. No sé, cabrón, find a way. So I bring that, and that means I don't know, buddy, find a way.
Buddy.
But his response inspired me find a way. How do you find a sponsor? How do you find the talent you need to drive and meet that bottom line? How do you find the people you need to serve and make those hamburgers and fries? ¿Cómo lo haces? How do you find a way? In a few couple words, how do you help people find a way? How do you inspire people to find a way if they don't have a map? You shared earlier, how do you get into corporate, right?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't have the silver bullet for how you find a way. I think we're all still finding our way, if we're really honest. All of us here, we're figuring it out day by day. But what I do say is that, the knowledge that you have, it's not yours to keep, it's yours to share.
Yes.
So, the map that I've created that got me here, I'll share it with you. I don't know where it's going, but I hope it's somewhere great.
Thank you.
It's working with others, finding a way and finding what really energizes them and what's that spark to make a difference. So that's where I'd say you're not alone in finding the way.
Yeah, it's networking. It's your network. I share very quickly the story that where I got to today. When I was a fellow in Washington, D.C. back in the 90s, I went to the CHCI gala, and they told me, just come up, show up, we'll find a seat for you. The table that I sat at was the Pepsi table. And it was the gentleman who hosted me at that table who later, almost 20-some years later, recruited me to take his spot when he was promoted.
Wow.
So it's networking.
That's awesome. That's powerful. And that raises this notion that we cannot do this work alone. We need each other. No necesitamos. ¿Sí or no?
You see?
Great. And wrapping up, sí, ¿cómo? O sea, we need each other. Yes or no?
Yes.
Sí.
Órale, con fuerzas. Lunch is coming on its way. In the next few minutes, we're going to wrap up. So here's the question. What do you find rewarding about what you do for who you do it for?
Oh gosh,
Alyssa.
I think I've answered this question a few times.
That's good.
But no, I do. I love that we're showing up in each of the places where you can't show up. So we're investing in our crew members. We're getting them to college. We're finding opportunities for them to become leaders at our brand. We're doing amazing work in our supplier diversity. It's over $2 billion spend in Hispanic-owned businesses. It's incredible just to hear that. We're asking people to do the work with us. So we have, a mutual pledge that we're asking people to embark on this journey of DEI with us. So if you're doing business with us, let's do the diversity work together so we can broaden our impact. And then we're investing locally in, the city that we're in, and we're doing global work too. So we have far reaches, and we're doing all this work, and I can sit up here proudly and say, I think my abuelita would be proud of the work that I'm helping steward at a brand like this.
Awesome. Thank you. Denise?
What was the question again?
¿Qué pasó?
Oh, yes.
What's rewarding about what you do and for who you do it for?
What I'm inspired by is, Medtronic, our mission, our patients, and I have the privilege of not only working to support and have that broader outreach, our community, so I mentioned all of the initiatives there, our employees who maybe never thought they could reach the levels and being visible. I think that's another piece, really quick story is, for a while, I didn't want to share that I was Latina. I've got white skin. My last name is Korean. So,
Where are you from again, Denise?
North Dakota.
But in terms of the roots?
Chile. Yeah,
That's
sí,
awesome.
Chilena. And so, but because I didn't want anyone to say, she got there because she's a woman of color. I had that fear that people, I wouldn't be valued for what my contributions were. And there was a point in my career, was when Omar Ishrak initiated the networks and said, we need you to do this work. You need to be more visible. And that was why I thought, this is a bit of my obligation to share this proudly for others in our broader community. So lots of ways, yeah.
Fantastic.
Lupe.
Honestly, it's working 18 years now with a company that values my voice, that's empowered me to bring others along, and I love doing that.
Great. And wrapping up, thank you for that, Lupe. One last question for each of you, really quickly. Melissa, are you loving it?
Loving it.
Órale pues. Denise, are you loving what you do?
Oh my gosh, every day with enthusiasm, yes.
Thank you. Lupe, are you loving what you do?
I thought you were going to ask me if I'm part of the Pepsi generation.
Hey, I remember the 80s commercials.
But yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and I asked that question because we need to love what we do in order to create significant impact that matters, whether it's driving the bottom line, creating that competitive advantage for a company, leveraging DEI as a differentiator, helping to increase spend with women and minority-owned business-owned enterprises, helping to recruit Hispanic talent, diverse talent, allies, because we cannot do this work alone. And I'll end with this, and we'll go to Q&A. It's a quote, it's one of my favorite ones, and it's, again, related to someone who knew the founder of McDonald's. None of us is as good as all of us. Pat Harris, she's the former Global Chief Diversity Officer. She brought on a fantastic successor, Wendy Lewis, if you're still here, I love you, we love you. But none of us is as good as all of us, and that's the truth. We need allies, we need amigos, amigas, tíos, tías, you know it. At that point, in this session, we're gonna come to an end and open it to Q&A. Por favor.
We have a virtual question. Your companies invest in the Hispanic community, but how are you measuring that investment and taking that data to make better decisions?
Wow, it's a big question. Good one. Any takers?
I spoke a little bit about that, you know, the data absolutely is our friend. And it is, as a part of the REJ, the Racial Equality Journey, we're holding that metrics. We're making that information public. So looking at beyond the business. So if we've invested in over 200 businesses, Latina-owned businesses, and looking at them and keeping track of what is the growth metrics. What we found is that we've added over 300 percentage points of growth in their business.
Yeah.
So understanding that this dollar investment is an infusion that grows exponentially.
Similar tracking from the supplier diversity aspect with Medtronic as well. And then also looking at Latinos entering our workforce, measuring that at all levels. And did you know that when we have so we track how many applicants, interviews to hire. Latinos have the highest conversion rate from applicant to hire. Right. So that's something we're saying, how do we get out there and get more Latinos in STEM and visibility as well?
Great.
Similarly at McDonald's, we're tracking against our diversity suppliers, but we're also, you know, working with our most trusted partners. So for instance, you know, the grants that we're making in Chicago, we got the best of like who really are understanding data. So the Chicago Community Trust is one of our most trusted partners in the philanthropic world, and they do really aggressive data analysis on like key metrics of how, you know, the grant is serving the population that we committed the money to. And, you know, we will find out in a year like what dollar for dollar what this investment makes. But on a personal note, we can already see the transformation that is happening across nonprofits who are telling us, even anecdotally, the money that we're spending is allowing them to create greater impact in their communities and creating more impact for the youth that they serve.
That's great.
Hello.
Next question.
Hello, I'm Arturo Delgado at Best Buy. Woo! Let's go
Best Buy.
Gotta yell it out, right? Gotta represent.
Awesome.
And I had my question is, you know, I work remotely, and you know, jobs are kind of, companies are taking more of that remote, and I think it benefits, I think, the Hispanic, you know, just myself being Hispanic, you know, we're all about family, taking care of our family, and you know, I'm that person that works in tech, and you know, I credit that to my father who pushed me to set that goal and to really work in the tech field. And one of the things I see in my community, since I work remotely, is that, you know, there are a lot of Hispanics that love technology and want to excel in technology, but there are barriers that are really stopping them from being able to succeed. And so I think my question is, how do we build a relationship with our organization and our local communities and our local, let's say, governments, right? In terms of, you know, these areas or our community colleges, you know, where we see large, I think, Hispanic populations going to those schools. As myself, as going to community college and then transferring to university, you know, I see myself, you know, trying to push and help my community out, but I want to see how I could create that relationship with my organization and my community.
Great question.
So is the question more what can you do or what are our companies doing?
what an individual can do in our organization to
Yeah.
create a relationship between our organization
Yeah.
and our local communities where we're from. Specifically because I work remotely, and you know my company's based off Minnesota, you know, and I live in Coachella Valley right here close by.
Yeah.
You know what? How can I, as an individual, create that connection between Minnesota and California, Coachella Valley, California?
Yeah, I think part of it's making the reach outs and asking others that you work with, what does that connection look like? And then another real value with having you here on the West Coast when we're looking at a larger Latino population, how can you build those connections and visibility to help provide opportunities? Is Best Buy recruiting from some of the local schools here? Are they looking at, have a voice? We're looking at Medtronic as how do we maybe modify some of our basic requirements in the tech field? Do you really have to have a 4-year degree? Yeah. Could it be a community college? What are the experiences? And so to be vocal and share that with others.
Yeah, and if I may, I'd like to jump in because before I came to SARA, I worked with Sodexo, current corporate member. It comes down to the capabilities and services of your respective company. In this case, tech, right? And much more than tech, right? Connecting, networking, all that. In the context of Sodexo, it's a global food and facilities firm. 18th largest employer in the world, 430,000 employees. Probably grew since I left back in 2017. The point is, I was remote for the whole time I was there, 6 years. I've been a remote employee for 11, 12, 15 years. The point is, what you can do is you can scan the external environment, scan the internal and external environments, so internal in terms of your company, identify who are the ERG leads, not just Hispanic, but Black, right, Asian Pacific Islander, right, intergenerational, millennial, zennial, whatnot, and map that in your respective geographic location and say, hey, what can we do for young people, with a focus on Hispanic, but what can we do for young people to emphasize pursuit of career pathways in tech? You can take it a step further, going back to Sodexo, where we're global, we decentralize. We're based in France, but they have a headquarters in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And we partnered with MALDEF. So Sodexo did a sponsorship with the Mexican American Legal Defense Education Fund, MALDEF for short, and said, hey, we want to help leverage our capabilities and services to help foster an awareness and interest in careers in hospitality and food service. It was a culinary program. So MALDEF had these programs because they already educate young people, immigrant communities, and we tapped into that young population. We would bust in kids and their parents for a Saturday, and we did a whole full day of culinary healthy eating habits. So we were checking the box for health and wellness, checking the box for community engagement, and checking the box for influencing careers for the future.
Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Anyone want to add? We're good?
It's a long line of questions.
Great, thank you for the question.
Good afternoon, and thank you so very much. I'm Dr. Jose Silva. I'm with SHIP, so thank you, Medtronic. Puerto Chicano from Denver, Colorado. My question really centers on disparities. I look at equity as addressing disparities.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you individually address disparities in your leadership to show equity in your posture.
You know, I appreciate that advantage view. When you saw the pandemic, there was a disparate impact on the Latino and African American communities.
Yeah.
And it was, again, going back to the data, reaching those numbers, identifying that, and making the case. And because we were doing so, and that goes actually to the other question earlier, is building a coalition, an internal coalition, and presenting the data.
Yep.
That's when you make the business case. That's the language of business, and ultimately what empowers action.
Yeah. And it's when you see those opportunities, how do you take action? Don't wait, right? And that was something else with our HLN community. We saw, so after George Floyd, Breonna Taylor's, those murders, the health disparities during COVID, said, how can we take action? So it was our HLN community wanted to raise visibility and awareness. And now, so corporate Medtronic, they have health equity initiatives, and a lot of the work that they're implementing was started in the HLN community and people taking action. Yeah.
Great. I want to acknowledge the Best Buy guy. I am but one, right? I am but one, but many. Somos muchos. We are many. And when we team up with that great idea, Best Buy guy, we got to talk, you can amplify change. Yeah. Thank you to our panelists, Melissa, Denise, Lupe. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Next up, you have your lunch program, and enjoy an impactful program as well. Enjoy the networking. Thank you.
Thank you.